Great, Hunter. Thanks for having me.
I'm really, really honored to have you. Thank you for your service, by the way, as well.
Thank you. Forgive me, I'm a little under the weather as this time of year changes for everybody. Hope I'm not going to have to clear my throat or profusely sweat on camera, but here we are. It's November.
Yeah, here we are. Well, if you need to take a sip of water, that's totally welcome at any point. I can happily do a tap dance while you clear your throat. You're totally good here. I got my theater background. I got you, Christopher. I got you.
Appreciate it.
So, Christopher, tell me a little bit before we jump into the questions here. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and why this became your passion and your career path once you entered civilian life.
Yeah, like everyone, I think everybody faces a financial weather storm at some point in their life, and both my wife and I were in the real estate business in Florida, and when I was in mortgages and she was in real estate in 2008, uh, it was hard in Florida. In fact, in our own county, it was 56% foreclosure rate, which came to a halt for all of our business, and we had some tough decisions to make. At that time period, we didn't know what was next and where to look for that income because we had invested so much in what we were doing for the last 10 years at that point. But we also, as far as the veteran space, have very close friends of mine that I grew up with that were coming home from service. And I saw their challenges and I saw their their tough battles that they faced. And I knew I could do something about it. And I
Mm,
thought that the financial literacy path, along with our executive director, John Pickens, which was 40 years VA service, a veteran as well, we came up with a game plan to do something about it and at least help those we could reach.
mm. And now you've weathered two crashes in the real estate market.
Yeah. Amongst other things, I think there's ebbs and flows with finance in everybody's lives. You don't need an economy crash or a real estate crash to battle a storm. It could take job loss or transition from service or a number of things that really create a conversation about what's next.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm sure a lot of people can already identify and relate with what you're saying. It's a huge transition to come out to suddenly have all of these responsibilities that are now about me. There's so much about being of service and focusing on the bigger picture and other people. And then suddenly y'all are put in this position like, well, now it's just good luck. Go, you got to go take care of yourselves. And that can be really confusing, I imagine.
Well, it can, Hunter. By the way, I love this platform. I think this conversation piece is really, really beneficial for everybody listening. Number one, you have civilians that have never been in service, and then obviously veterans and all their family members, which are closely aligned. They know the jargon, they know the acronyms, they know the military style in life, and they too battle the same, challenges when their veteran suffers. But you mentioned this transition, if you will. I would tell you that, one of the things that we battled early on was really learning where the problems are started. And it
Mm,
wasn't when they were transitioning out, it was actually when they're going in. A lot of men and women go in. And by the way, female veterans, thank you for your service as well. We have a larger female fighting service than we've ever had in the history of our country. And they're
mm,
coming home too. And they have a completely different set of challenges in addition to what everybody else battles. But you go in at 18 and you think about it, your roof's paid for, your clothing's paid for, you have a steady income, your food's paid for, your essentials are paid for,
mm,
and you're gathering this income, and no one's really teaching you how to manage it in service. They have personal financial coaches on base. There's some risk going to them with issues, but the reality is in service is a real challenge because you have some that have married young. Now they have a spouse at home. That spouse is worried about their spouse serving. The other spouse is at home by themselves. They maybe have the house, maybe the kids, maybe some car notes, maybe a number of things that present financial challenges in their own lives. And the last thing they want to do is alert their loved one that something's going on at home because now they're not focused, right? That's the
mm.
challenge. And when we transition, hopefully we've been able to impact them through an outreach program that Veterans Plus does so well on many installations and bases around the world that interjects some kind of knowledge to them before they transition out.
Mm. And why do these challenges persist for folks? Why is it the same issue over and over?
There is a number of reasons. I wanted to make sure I covered some of the really interesting ones because the work is so deep and diverse, by the way. And as far as this platform, we have the most diverse fighting force in the world, right? This doesn't land on any one population, but some of these things are certainly cultural differences. Military environment is completely different for those that have not served um, than the civilian environment, and it provides a lot of structure, as you mentioned. Your idea of service is that you're giving your relationship, your control over yourself to someone else. That is service, number one. And you're being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And all of a sudden you transition out. That in itself is a challenge because now you're going to deal with things in your financial lives that you didn't have to deal with. New taxes that you didn't yet pay. Things that you didn't pay before, now you're paying when you transition out. That's a challenge. Simply in the military, folks have a permanent change station or temporary change station around the country in the military. We're going to move you over to Virginia. You just have to pack up and go. We're going to move you to across the world. You have to pack up and go. And those kinds of things present its own challenge when in service. And then some of the economic factors that we have, housing costs. When you went in, they were a number. When you came out, they're a completely different number. And now you're trying
Mm,
to find a job. I love the idea that you guys are having a job fair. I love the idea that you're including employment in all this because employment landscape has changed. And all of those things are part of why it persists. Why doesn't it go away? Because the ebbs and flows of finance are never settled.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. So you mentioned a lot of folks will go in when they're 18 years old. For someone who hasn't served, such as myself, can you educate me a bit about what ages are folks when they're coming out, entering civilian life? I know it can range wildly, but what's your experience with folks that you're working with at Veterans Plus?
Of course, the majority go in it young, right? Um, but the experience is it doesn't land on an age either. The
Mm,
same person went in at 18 when they come out, if they're 35, if they're 40, have they really had that personal financial deep dive study and education they need to materialize at a 40-year-old? Think about the life we all live. And by the way, I didn't serve either.
mm,
This is my service.
mm,
Four of my best friends went in to serve. I went to play college football. I was blessed, and they're all at battle in the Gulf War.
mm,
I needed to do something, and that was part of my journey as well. So back to why, there's some of the why.
mm,
Um, but an example, we were out in California on a base teaching, educating in a class of 200 some odd individuals. And we got pulled aside by a major, just made major, by the way. He was put on orders in May of that year, and now it's almost October. He's not yet received his pay.
hmm,
He's on orders. He's relocated. He's not yet been paid for his service on order. That alone presented a challenge at home. The other spouse was having trouble with paying everything, increased costs, times of change for that family, and was given an ultimatum. You fix it or leave the military. Or we have to do something as a couple. And that's a lot of stress, right? So it doesn't have an age factor. We've met individuals that are in their 50s, well in their 50s, and in the journey of life, young people make early mistakes in their finances. Then all of a sudden they get a little smarter. They figure out in their late 20s that they really want to make something of themselves. They start getting serious about their career. In their maybe in the late 20s, early 30s, they're thinking about home ownership. They're thinking about the things that want to, the family part, the family unit. Did I find my partner? Did I find my path?
mm,
That's 30s. Usually by the 40s, most have that figured out. But if you have someone coming out in their 40s that have never really lived the civilian life, they're in trouble if they've not received that education.
mm. So I'm curious, how does Veterans Plus approach financial literacy differently for veterans compared to other financial education programs?
Great question, and thank you for that. Number one, actually, I made a note on that. I want to make sure I cover it. Um, so we recognized early on that transition was the issue, like I said earlier.
Mm,
In our fourth year, we authored a three-part series and presented it to the DoD for approval. It is one of two financial curriculums allowed to be taught on base, and we are super proud of that. We call it
Mm,
Ready and Fire, and Ready is pre-deployment. AIM is for the family and spouse support during deployment, and then Firepower, again, hopefully we can get to them before they depart or separate. But oftentimes it's reintegration events that we're attending and educating, where we give them the firepower to successfully transition home by alerting them and educating them what's coming. And we try to capture them in the beginning, but that's not always possible. Sometimes outreach events are put on pause through COVID. It was complete, come to a stop. We've taught over 3,600 around the country and 7 other countries on base installations, reintegration events, Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, everybody. Um, that's been our approach. And we think addressing 3 parts of deployment independently is a smart way. Number one. Number two, how we differed from the very get-go from every other program that was out there is we have veterans on the phone in the classroom educating. And then, more importantly, we have spouses. Spouses speak a different language than veterans do. Caregivers speak a different language than spouses and veterans do, and oftentimes caregivers are spouses. And then the survivors. We have a multitude of stories that survivorship is very difficult for families that have endured that, or spouses that have endured that. So we hire and train these individuals, get them accredited in some of our incredible partners through AFCPE, and others that gain that accreditation, become part of our team. You'll see here on my shirt, Coordinated Assistance Network. That is our platform. We have over 450 financial coaches, counselors, and financial planners on this platform that are there to do nothing, provide you financial direction and education at zero cost. That's how we do it.
mm,
And we've separated ourselves in a big way. We've become the portal that people look to for that reason.
mm. I love hearing that. That's amazing how many folks you've helped and met and got to hear their stories.
It's it's nearing 3 million by the middle of next year. uh,
Wow.
One-on-one and at classroom education. We annually reach 100 to 150,000 every year through generous funding from our providers. And that ebbs and flows too. We're a nonprofit. A lot of people think of nonprofit work as everybody's funding everybody, and that's just not the case. I can tell you firsthand, starting this organization from zero, uh, getting a foundation to believe that financial education and literacy is important is a stretch. Even though we all live on credit, our entire world, our country lives on credit. And uh, I've not met yet somebody that has not yet a credit card. Everybody has credit cards, right?
Hmm.
Well, we believe in foundation supporting this work because it applies to everything: your jobs, your home ownership, your relationships, your lives. So we do save cars, houses, marriages, and we save lives. Uh,
Mm,
there is a suicide epidemic going on that we believe finance is in the direct middle of that because we live in tough times today again, and we want to be a resource to help and do our part.
yeah. So, speaking to the uncertain economy that we're currently in, can you share some practical steps or strategies for veterans that can take right now to improve their financial stability?
Yes, start doing something, right? If it's not Veterans Plus, find a local resource or another organization that focuses on that deep financial education. Like I said, online, we have a national program going on right now where the Foundation for Financial Planning has partnered with us and started recruiting certified financial planners around the country that do nothing but give their time. They're not paid for it. It's pro bono. And you have to be a willing participant in your journey. No one's going to come save you. I know we all hear that, but it's real, particularly in your finances, right? Finance is a very difficult thing to talk about. So we give you the space where it's, if you want to talk on video with one of our coaches, counselors, CFPs, you can do that. But oftentimes it's just simply over the phone where you can put the kids to bed, spread the bills across the table, and talk about what you don't want to talk about, but what is necessary to talk about for your success in your family, in your future, in your home, your job. Everything applies there. So you have to start. Um, One of the things that we feel that is most important is to connect with your local community organizations and make sure that you have someone to talk to.
Mm,
If not, again, over the phone, lots of organizations and lots of communities have the same resources that you can connect to and find out where is my path. And they're there to teach you. They're there to educate you. That's what they're for.
yeah. The community aspect is really resonates with me because what you're also speaking to about the conversations that folks don't want to have, there can be a lot of guilt, shame, regret, and confusion there that, like you said, talking about finances is very difficult, especially if you aren't used to doing that. And a community that hears you judgment free, I imagine, is invaluable.
Hunter, every single person that's going to watch or listen to this has dealt with it. Every single one of them. I don't care if they come from a wealthy family or they come from a family that has nothing. At some point in your lives, you're going to deal with a financial storm that is going to cause you to say, how do I do this? And you don't have to have the answers. That's the point. When you want to fix your car, do you take it to the next door neighbor that doesn't know anything, or do you try to fix it yourself? Maybe, but it's more likely that if you're going to be successful in that repair, you're going to take it to someone that knows what they're doing.
Hmm.
That's what we're trying to get across, that we don't have a judgment here. We don't have a guilt for you to shame you. We've all experienced this, and our journey, our path, our commitment, and our mission is to take you from here to there, and there is successful. On this platform, can Coordinated Assistance Network has thousands of organizations. If you're dealing with a financial struggle, you're likely going to deal with something else. We have
Hmm.
nonprofits from around the country that are on this system that are there to do nothing but to serve you and make sure that your journey is successful from every aspect of your life.
Mm. So, for veterans that are currently struggling with debt, what
Mhm.
are some first steps that you would recommend to regain control of their finances and work towards hopefully a debt-free future?
Yeah, one of the things you have to do, a practical approach is to budget. First, learn how to budget. What does it mean to budget? There's income, there's assets, there are expenses and liabilities. And just in say, here's a perfect example. We had someone tell us not too long ago that $5,000 on an open credit card was an asset. The education part of it says, no, that's not an asset. That can become a liability very quickly. And
Mhm.
depending on that rate, it can be a very expensive liability. So the education piece of a budget is first and foremost. And I urge you, if your partner, if your spouse, if your family unit is that tight, you should be talking about this important piece. So again, talking about it and starting a budget, learning what a budget looks like. What types of income do we have? I mean, that babysitting job is income over and above that job you have, or if you have some income from another source that's not being recognized, the coaches are there to expose that. Let's count all the income. Then we have to count all the expenses. So we teach them about fixed expenses and variable expenses, how they
Mm.
did, how they can how income our interest rate and expenses is something you need to know about. How is it calculated? And certainly credit, right? So the budget and the credit, I would say, are the most important things that you can learn about when it comes to financial education. Because again, we live on credit. Your credit from a 680 to a 700 is a completely different rate class for banks, lenders, institutions that lend you money. So learning about those things. And again, starting is the first part of your journey. Budgeting and credit worthiness are the things you need to know about the most and very quickly in this world that's not getting cheaper. And we know that.
Hmm. Are there any financial myths that you find a lot of people, especially veterans, tend to believe and you would love to debunk today?
Well, veterans, I said it earlier, if there's that financial myth that debt and financial struggles start when they're leaving.
Hmm.
That's the myth that everybody thinks. And I can tell you, um, you know, the other side of the myth is that these organizations are not readily available. I mean, they're everywhere. We're one example. And I mean, it's easy to sit on this call and tell you that we're the greatest since sliced bread. I'd love to tell you that. We've helped millions and millions of people, but The reality is the organizations are there in your local community. They're there online for you. But the myth is you have to know what you're doing before you transition, because the taxes that you're going to incur on the money that you weren't being taxed on previously is so important to understand, and how the real world works. And I mean real world because a lot of young men and women come out, they have no idea. They have no idea what's coming. So the big myth to us that we see in education piece is that spouses are sitting at the table with us saying, "Where was this when we were deployed? The third time, much less the
Mm,
first time." Knowing what's coming is key to making that transition what you expect it to be, and finding the resources in the local community to engage in employment. That's another piece. Do not come home and look to the VA. VA does some wonderful things, but they really focus on healthcare, right? There are organizations, and knowing your community partners, by the way, knowing what community nonprofits do. Um, Everybody's familiar with Wounded Warrior Project. We're a big fan of them, but they do not provide deep financial education that the warriors need. We've partnered with them in the past, and we've done some great work with them, but they do what they do well, and we do what we do well. So knowing your community and engaging your community is key to all of this, and that myth can be debunked really quickly by changing your education level. And no matter what it is, you need to know what's coming.
yeah. Are there any success stories that you'd love to share with over the 3 million people you've touched? I'm sure there's quite a few.
Again, I would tell you there's I'm just going to give you one example,
Yeah.
but I would tell you, over the people we've touched and being able to educate and sit with, um, saving homes and lives and marriages, relationships, family units, keeping all that together is the goal of anybody. But we've been able to do that through our work. And it's very empowering when you go to sleep at night and your heart's heavy, and then you can wake up and help somebody and it's full again. It's a cycle. It's very cycled for a financial coach to know the troubles that these people face in and out transition. Very, very difficult lives that they live, and they give themselves freely by signing to a dotted line that it costs up to the cost of their lives is meaningful to me and our teams. But I'll tell you, with recent success, we have a financial coach that worked with a family over a series of months. When we met them, they were over $50,000 in debt, struggling, considering bankruptcy, which has gotten harder, by the way. Um,
Hmm.
Bankruptcy laws have tightened up, and that's just not something that everybody can go do and live freely and dump their debt. So these people engaged us. We worked hard with them, and they listened, and they took the action that we gave them and put it into a plan with the coach. And 6 months later, they were 56,000 positive. They are saving for their child's education. They're saving for rainy days, which is incredibly key. You don't know when a job loss is coming. You don't know when a big repair on your home or car is coming. Uh, and by the way, you can save for vacations, which I think everybody wants to do. They want to take a break. So all these things are possible because you just leaned in. And that's the message I would love to leave everybody listening here, that if you're a veteran, you don't have to do it alone. Spouse, caregivers, survivors, you don't have to do it alone. We are
Mhm.
there. We have resources. People are giving their time. Our big program now are financial planners that are coming in and giving their time freely just to help you out and make sure you're positive. At the end of the day, that one success story speaks volumes of what we're capable of. And yes, it is on the higher end. It is on the higher end, but that's possible. And I think we lose sight of that when we're drowning in debt.
Yeah, yeah. So we only have a couple minutes left, Christopher. Is there one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were at the very beginning of your career?
Um, I think I think if I'm going to use myself as an example and my own struggles, it was to be an open book.
Mm,
Um, Being in finance is one of the hardest things, two things to talk about in this world. I think being an open book and allowing someone in your space is what I want to leave, right?
mm,
You can start and you can be a closed door. You can take that budgeting class and not really take the budgeting class. Or you can say, here's all my bills. You upload the documents, you let the coach see, you let them in, and you really engage. What their job is to guide you, is to give you the direction. And without that open book advantage that you're giving the coach, they're too going to struggle with helping you to the next step. We want to make sure that everybody that we speak to or don't speak to that seeks someone else, that they understand that they're not drowning in debt because it's their particular case. There's millions and millions of cases just like you.
Mm,
It's the ability to say, I need help. And be an open book that it certainly helped us in our family in the time that we were transitioning from one career to another, and making sure that the intentions were there for the coach to guide me in the right direction and make sure that they had all the facts to do so.
yeah, great advice. Well, Christopher, for folks that would love to reach out, keep the conversation going with you, what's the best way to connect?
VeteransPlus.org. You can reach any of our team members, myself, right through the website. We were a small team at the leadership level. All of the coaches that we have online are all contracted to do the work that we do. The generous foundation funding that we receive goes specifically to pay our coaches, to pay for the platform to do what we do in that remote space. I'm working from home. It looks like you're working from home. And at the end of the day, people are at home, and this is the most comfortable place to do this. So we
Yeah.
built this platform. We've included community partners, national partners, funders that do nothing but this mission. And that's what this needs to be about, is during this financial difficult time, we're growing together because we have the same mission in mind.
I love that. Yeah, I once I fully was like, I'm leaning all in on working from home, I gutted a closet. So in front of me is an empty closet and all of my stuff.
I would just hope, you know what, when I speak to someone at home, I don't care if it's a Zoom call or a big national corporation, I want to
Yeah.
see someone in a robe, because that's when you need to, you're going to get your work done when you're
Like, good
comfortable.
morning.
Cup of Joe, it is what it is.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for making the time today and doing what you're doing. And I hope you feel better. You did fantastic. If you hadn't
Thank you.
mentioned anything, I wouldn't have known, but I hope you feel better soon.
Well, if anything, we're informing the uninformed and hopefully driving people to the message that they just need to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Christopher. I hope we get to do this again. Please come back.
Thank you. I will love to.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye bye.